the way I thought of the whole situation was, it wasn't to be buried close to the Johnson Ranch. Nothing of that ever come up. But what come up is the area that I knew, and I knew very well, around Blanco, New Brownsville. I knew the area because I was raised there. I knew it very well. It was no reason to be buried by the Johnson Ranch. We didn't know that Johnson was even involved with it. We didn't know Kennedy was involved with it that day in New York. All I was given is what to do and how to do it, and the trust that they had for me to figure out what to do later after whatever happened out of Waco that day that I could take care of. What would I do if I went to an area I didn't know anything about? I'd probably got arrested by the police or anything. But the way that I picked Blanco was, I knew the river and they wanted it somewhere on the river. And I think their idea of that, because it's no farming around a river, and usually a body can stay there for eternity. And that's why that I think that it was happened to be accidental only by the Johnson Ranch. It was nothing to do with President Johnson or anybody else. It probably was. I don't know anything about that. I wasn't told about it. But I was just told to dispose of 2 bodies, and one they had kindly landmark in New Brownsville. I don't know if they knew that area and they wanted both of them in New Brownsville. I don't know that. But I spoke up about Blanco, and that's why Blanco was picked for the second one. When they mentioned New Brownsville, I thought real hard on it. I didn't like it. It's a populated area, and the river there is a lot of vacation people up and down the river. And they mentioned the place that they had picked, the first one in New Brownsville, was not a vacation spot. It was away from the swimming area and on the river, the spring. It was a huge spring boil out of New Brownsville. And this one was away from that, probably a mile and a half. And so I think they wanted to pick another spot in New Brownsville. Well, if you was in my place that day, if you had this to have to do, you wouldn't want to hunt another place that you didn't know nothing about at all. But I did recognize where they marked the one in New Brownsville. And they said more information would be sent to me. And I said at that time that I would like to pick on the River Road in Blanco and on the river there. And that's why I picked it, and they decided to go along with that. Okay, the question was mob disposing of bodies. Well, the Hudson River is probably full of concrete bodies. The dumps are full, like they killed the big man from the Coal Miners Union. Yeah, they can dispose of bodies, but that body might be buried right around in Virginia or West Virginia that I'm speaking of. Gangsters, a lot of times they leave the body laid where they are, unless it's a direct connection. And I've never heard of them ever burying, when they made a hit, I never heard of the person they hit being buried or being disposed of. They lay where they fall, and they walk away. As far as the gangsters doing away with bodies, that's bull. But it's handy when they're on the Hudson River there. It's very handy, but a lot of them been caught doing that. And most of the time, as I say, they leave them lay where they drop, and I don't care what anybody say. That's the way they did the mafia did that between the different families to get rid of the bodies, dump them in rivers and stuff. Yeah, they do love rivers, I'll admit that. And that's why these 2 rivers was picked for this to happen. But they wanted no proof later on, no proof whatsoever of anything ever coming up, and they wanted Oswald to take the blame, and I think that's how it happened. As I was talking to them, and they said it's not a normal hit, it's a special hit, and we want to cover the tracks completely. They said we don't want no tracks leading out of Fort Worth. That's what they spoke of more than anything. They did tell me it was a special job, and every track had to be covered. It couldn't, and I know this, that if I'd done the job, after I had buried the two, I would have been the third one buried, because they wanted no leads whatsoever. And every who did the job originally, he's not alive today. And now they might have disposed of him in the Hudson River. Who knows? I don't know that. But I'm just saying, the whole thing was a special job, and I took very careful thinking of it. I knew at the time we was talking that I would never be involved with a murder like this, but I was in a situation I had no choice. Now, you spoke of the driver. Well, who would they hire to make a job like this? They'd have to make a person that's well experienced in driving, and driving fast, and driving careful, knowing when to speed, when not to speed, and if you got a highway patrol behind you, how you have to lose them. It's a lot of factors there. But they picked me because I did have a very good name in driving. I had one of the best. And I was a brutal human, and they could trust me to carry out the job. I think in their hearts, they thought that I would be the number one person to make the hit and walk away from it without anything being found out about. Now, as I say, whoever did do that pickup and went down there, they're not alive today, or they wasn't alive, I know, no longer than a month after that. But that's the way they do. They end all of them, so it's nobody can talk. A dead man can't talk, and that's why the two hitters was dead. I think they did a terrible thing by going against Echo. I just in Argo. They was professional men. They was true to anybody they worked for, but they was expendable in this end. They could be done without. And the driver, who would they pick? Joe Gallo, or would they pick somebody out of Harlem that had no experience? Who would they pick? They had to pick somebody that knew something about what they was doing. And I was very, very well experienced in all lines. I admit that today, and I'm sorry for it. But I've been the only one. I could have carried that out. But then, as soon as I went to collect my money, my life would have been over.